Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. I am with my co-hosts Trevor and Lynda. Good to see you guys.
Hey, good to see you too.
Same here.
Yes. How was your week?
Trevor, you go.
Yeah, for me, just still just lots of family stuff, just busy. We've got school plays and concerts, and we've got still two of my boys are still doing some wrestling. I just got off a very, very long 48-hour rotation at the fire department, and so I kind of slept in this morning, which was nice. My wife didn't yell at me too much for that. But yeah, so no, it's been good. Glad to be back. I had to miss the last couple of weeks because of my job. But yeah, just happy to be back here today.
Well, we did miss you.
We did. We missed you.
We're glad to have you back.
Oh, good to be back. It's good to be missed.
When you're working, do you stay at home or do you actually stay at the station?
I stay at the station. Yeah, we stay at the station for 48 hours.
So your family gets a little bit of a vacation too.
Yes, they do. and that has been pointed out to me in the past by my wife when I've taken vacation time and stayed at home a little too long, and she'll be like, "You need to go back to work. You're kind of messing up this business."
Yeah, for sure. How you doing, Lynda?
I'm doing really well. As a matter of fact, my family got to get rid of me this past week because I spent a few days in Kingston. I met up with one of my university friends that I haven't seen for 20 years.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
So she and I met up in Kingston. She still lives in Montreal and I live here. So we kind of met halfway and had an amazing 3 days of food and wine and catching up and all that. So my family, they managed to survive without me.
It's funny how they do that, right?
Yeah. How dare they? Anyway.
I know.
How about you?
Oh, my week has been okay. It's been okay. We're still, still chugging through. It's I'm looking forward to the spring. I'm so tired of the snow now. We haven't even had we actually were so lucky. We really didn't get any snow until January. But since then it's been freaking cold and it's been snowy and I'm just I'm done now. I think I somehow got spoiled in between. Up until because we didn't even have snow for Christmas. It was really, it was just really dry here. And I've kind of determined that I think I'm supposed to live in a place that has no snow and sun. That's kind of where it took me a few years, of living to realize this, but it's becoming more prevalent. So that's sort of where I am. Really doing
the weather's been pretty wild.
Huh?
So the weather's been really wild. It's been pretty crazy, and it's a lot of fun where I live. We have a lot of people moving in from out of state, especially from California and places that are perpetually have nicer weather, and they're just absolutely bewildered at the Idaho winter sometimes. And what's really funny is because our weather is really bipolar. And we'll have this nasty cold weather, and then we'll all of a sudden have a week or maybe even 2 weeks of pretty nice stuff, and people start getting really excited. They start breaking out the seeds and planting gardens, and I'm like, I think you got
what are you doing?
Months. So
yeah,
and sure enough, and so this last we've had snow and hail and rain and just tons of wind, and it's pretty fun.
Great.
Yeah. I'm good. I'm good with no snow, and it just well, you know what? It was almost a year ago that I was in Florida. So I mean, that was beautiful weather, and I'm really missing that. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's the anniversary of being in Florida that I'm really missing. So I'm gonna just go with that for right now. But yeah. So our show.
Our weather is very strange.
Yeah.
The frequencies are all screwed up.
Yeah, right. But our show today is kind of exciting. It's not screwed up, hopefully.
Well, hopefully not. We'll find out. So
We're going to talk about frequencies and brainwaves and how they could affect the paranormal and the supernatural, I think, in general, right? Like, I think this is kind of a really fascinating topic. So you were doing some research into it, Trevor, you were saying. So
yeah, this is something that an idea that popped up for me a few years ago. My sister gave me a book to read that talked about. It was talking about basically how people can receive signs from their loved ones that have passed on, and it was written by a medium, and it was an interesting book. But in one part, she kind of talked about how she had gone through this process of being vetted through I think it's called Forever Families Foundation, and there's like three different places that psychics and mediums can go through to be tested, and they're kind of vetted through these companies. One was called Veritas. One was the Forever Family Foundation, and the other one I can't remember what it was called. It starts with a B though. But anyway, she talked about how she was put on an EEG, that's electroencephaly. I'm not saying that right. Encephalographical
EKG, maybe? An EKG?
I am
No, I think
butchering it. Anyway, they put the electrodes on your brain, and they're able to map brain waves and what's going on while you're doing things. And it was interesting. They found that these mediums that are the legit ones, when they're put, they have like people who aren't mediums that are the controls, and they ask them the same questions, or they have them go through the same things. And the mediums, the real ones, their brain waves completely change while they're doing their readings, to the point where they are actually in a state of what most people would be in either very deep meditation or in a certain point in sleep. Only the mediums are still able to maintain consciousness and relay what it is that they are seeing. So that kind of sparked an idea or a thought in my brain that, what if, as paranormal investigators, if we were able to somehow be able to put ourselves into that meditative state, would we be able to perceive spirits on a more regular basis? Is that something? That's the question. We have a lot of people who talk about having their paranormal experiences right when they're waking up, or they are in a deep sleep and something woke them up and they could see that spirit standing next to their bed and things like that. So anyway, that kind of grew my interest in that, and I thought this would be an interesting thing to discuss and see what your thoughts were on this.
So I don't know a whole lot. Like, I don't know a lot of the technical terms or anything like that. I do know that a few years when I first started doing paranormal investigating, we did sort of an interesting experiment just in one of our investigators' homes, like another investigator's house. And what we decided to do is very similar, I guess, to some degree. It was that, like, the concept was brought from the Faraday cage, where you kind of enclose yourself and you do different experiments with no sight, no sound, all of that, right? It was a lot of white noise that we used, actually, is what we did. And it was really interesting because what we did, we used like a blindfold, and instead of like you're like completely cutting out the sound, we used white noise. So we used a white noise machine, and what we did is we had somebody on the other side of the door where we wouldn't have been able to see or hear, even if we decided to take everything off, like if we decided to look or hear, we wouldn't have been able to see, what was going on. But they were showing a variety of pictures, and they would hold, I guess what they were doing on that other side is, you would hold up a picture and let's say it was a door. So you would say door or dog, and that sort of thing. And it was really interesting because to some degree it does have to do with the brain waves, the frequencies.
Oh, 100%.
Like it's not, it's not just like, are you psychic or not psychic? It was a lot of, where is your state of consciousness, right? In order to pick up and feel or hear a lot of what was going on. And they did different things, like whether or not it was showing a picture or talking or what, whatever, like there was different things that they were doing. And each person went for about 15 or 20 minutes approximately, which is, it doesn't seem like a long time, but it really is when you can't hear and you're only hearing, or when you can't see and you're only hearing with a white noise. And it was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. It was really neat to see what your results were. That was more fascinating because you're kind of, once you, like the first few minutes, you're sort of in this place where you're really worried about the results, like not worried about them, but your mind is really on them. And then once you start listening to the white noise, your body is starting to relax, calm, kind of go into a state of meditation to some degree. And then you're just, what we did also, we also had a tape recorder in the room so that we could hear the results. So like all the results were being recorded, right? So what we said was so it wasn't just like, we come out and go, oh yeah, it was a dog. Oh, there's the picture of the dog. Oh yeah, I saw it. And it was like everything was recorded at the same time. So we were able to verify the results. And it was really interesting. And then after the first couple of minutes, your body just goes into like this meditative type of state, I guess would be the best way to say it. And you don't care what the results are. You're just literally, you can see, like for me, I could see the flashes of different things. And you're not really sure where they're corresponding or how they're corresponding or if they mean anything at all. You're just kind of going with the flow and going, okay, whatever. Like this is what I'm seeing, I'm hearing, I'm just giving that out. And see where it goes from there. And the results were really accurate. But the funny thing is that they were accurate for pretty much all of us. Like even the ones that weren't, that would be like, oh, I'm about as psychic as a stick. You know what I mean? Like, because you've always got that investigator that claims that they have absolutely no, psychic abilities or any feelings or any intuition whatsoever. But even for them, the results were fairly accurate, I would say. So it was a lot of fun. Definitely something I would recommend doing again. But I do think that might have had something to do with the brain waves, the frequencies, and all of that.
And so so everybody understands when we talk about brain waves, I mean, from a very from a scientific standpoint, what we're talking about is the basic structure of your brain. And inside the brain, we have these neurons. Okay, and we have these neurons and these neuron pathways, and that is how the brain sends information and commands to the rest of our body. So we have these neurons, we have these synapses, and these little receivers, and they're constantly firing back and forth depending on what we're doing, what we're seeing, and that's in different parts of our brain. So like when we're really focused on something, we're really concentrating on something, the back of our brain is what's primarily firing. The occipital portion is actually where what perceives our sight, over to our temporal part, which is where we get our hearing, and a lot of our motor cortex as well is firing. When we're sleeping, it's predominantly our frontal cortex that is at its busiest, and the rest of it's kind of is a little bit quieter. At all times, we don't have one brain wave. The waves are what is being measured in waves are the firing of those synapses, all those neurons that are firing. That's what we're talking about with brain waves. And the frequency in which they fire, they're measured in frequency of hertz, which is the speed in which they are firing. They're also measured in amplitude, which is how strong of a wave that you're getting. There's 5 types of brain waves. The slowest brain wave is the delta wave. Those are found typically when you are in your deepest sleep. Sometimes if you're in a really deep meditative state, you can get those. The next one is the theta brain wave, which is you're kind of in a really relaxed phase. Maybe you're laying out in the sun at the beach. You're very, very relaxed. Typically people are in the alpha wave. That's probably what we would be predominantly in right now. We're thinking, we're focusing, we're doing a task. The alpha waves are predominantly firing. Beta is where you're kind of getting a little bit more excited, or your brain's firing a lot faster. And then the other one, which is kind of the least understood, is the gamma waves, in which is like the fastest wave. And there's talk about how there's been some studies that are actually suggesting that gamma waves are linked with healing, and how our body heals itself, and things like that. Interestingly enough, also the gamma wave was found in one of the psychic tests during which she was doing, I can't remember what she's a medium, and then she was doing something else. And it was interesting because she talked about how when she was doing like medium readings, she would see things out of her right side of her right side.
Yeah, that's how I see them. Yeah.
And when she was doing whatever it was she was doing, the right side of the occipital portion was firing almost with gamma waves. Oh. And it was what she had talked about by seeing with her left. And those don't know, when you're seeing things, so the things that you perceive with your right eye are actually being processed in the left side of your occipital brain, and then vice versa, they crisscross. So that was kind of interesting. So, but what they found with a lot of these mediums, they're seeing some delta and alpha activity at the same time, but predominantly the theta and delta. We are not in any one of these all the time, right? So your brain, we're not just like in an alpha state or in a delta state. Our brains are constantly changing these waves, and we're transitioning all the time, especially while we're falling asleep. There's a huge transition that's going in and out. In fact, we transition all the way from our deepest sleep to our lightest sleep about 5 times a night. If we're going for like a full 8 hours of sleep, you're going to get about 5 transitions all the way through. And then again, about like the hertz is just, how fast those waves are coming in. So if you ever go in and onto YouTube or something like that, and you search for, delta waves or binaural beats, things like that, you're going to get a lot of this stuff with the hertz, a lot of these music stuff to help people try to induce meditation, induce sleep. Because basically they're trying to trigger in these different hertz of where most people are during those phases of what they're doing. And so that's what I think I would love to see the paranormal community start doing, is kind of tracking. It's like, okay, when people are having these paranormal experiences, what are our brains doing? Where are we at in our hertz, and which, waves are we looking at?
I think the only hard part I think that I could see out of that is, when we have an experience, it's usually so sudden, like we don't expect it. Like it's not something that we were expecting to have. So that, unless people wore them, I think during an investigation, they could probably do it. But then the only thing is, you don't want to be in that place where you're aware of or looking for, like, even though on an investigation you're looking for something to happen, you're not like focused like that. You know what I mean? You're still entered, like you're still having fun with your team, you're still doing stuff, you're chatting, you're doing this, you're doing that. Whereas I think that if you were attached in some way to, let's say, brain probes, I don't know what else to call it, but you would be more aware and more alert of that you're attached, and you'd be like, like, I think you would be more like, you wouldn't be in that typical state of mind that you would normally be in. Like if there was a way or a machine, because I think that's a wonderful idea, Trev. I think if there was a machine or something that you could, wear or have on or be attached to in some way, without it being super obvious that you're attached to it, That would be amazing. I think that that would be such a cool experiment.
I think it would be too. But there are teams out there that do utilize different methods during their investigative sort of routines. And I do know one that uses a kind of a psychomantium experience during their investigation. So what they do, and you know what a psychomantium is, right? It's like this room that some of the Victorians actually used to have in their homes, where it was like a closet with a very comfortable chair. There was perhaps one candle that was set up as a focal point, and there might have been maybe a mirror in front of them, or maybe a blackened out mirror so that they can do some scrying. And they entered that kind of sort of like a what do they call it? Soporific state, where they're kind of half awake, half asleep. They're in that meditative state, and they ask for the spirits or spirit that's around them to communicate with them in any way, so that they can actually use their innate skills of accessing that part of their brain through this psychomantium experience to communicate with whatever spirit is around there. And I've always wanted to try it, kind of like, I don't know, almost like an Estes method, but not really.
Right.
I think that's an interesting way to do it. But if there were a machine that you could kind of hook yourself up to during that experiment or experience, that would be interesting to see how that cutting yourself off and going into yourself and creating that different atmospheric aura around you, how that would make you more susceptible maybe to having an experience.
Yeah. And that's really kind of where this thought process was taking me, because people have experiences. People who have experiences are going to have them whether they want them or they don't want them. And they're not in any type of meditative state usually. What I'm looking for is an opportunity to, or trying to figure out a way that like we can actually dive in and like, okay, we can connect here and, figure out, the figure out what's going on for some of these people. But, I've heard a lot about like vibrations and how like, as people, we have we vibrate at a certain frequency. Kathy, you know what I'm talking about there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah. So, I mean, we all run at a different energy or a vibrational field. Some people are within our vibrational field, and these are usually people that we find, even if we're not fully aware of it, that we find that we tend to jive with the best, right? They'll be in a very similar energetic field as we are. And then we've also got the lower vibrational people. So when we talk about higher vibration and lower vibration, I've always looked at it. So the way that, when I say this, the way my guides explained it to me, I guess is the best way to say it, is that all humans sort of run at we all have a standard. Let's just say this is like the math line of zero. Okay. Like we all sort of are, we all have that base zero. Okay. But when we have a lower vibrational field, let's say, we're in a state where drugs, alcohol, depression, all of this can affect us, our vibration goes down, right? So it doesn't mean that we're in particularly negatives, but instead of being at a higher level, let's say closer at the what they would consider like to be the God sense, right? Where you're at a very high vibrational field. So this would be somebody that very chill, allowing the energy to come, doesn't push energy, people that you like to be around because they've just got a good vibration about them. When you're around them, you feel good, you feel happy, you feel connected, you feel like they're encouraging, they're happy, they're not fake or phony, they're those sort of people, right? And these are the type of people that everybody kind of wants to be around. They're not going to be they're not they're not fake, they're not phony, they're just high vibration. They feel good to be around. And then you've got the lower vibration, obviously, which again goes back into like the drugs, the drinking, the alcohol, or the, depression, sickness, mental unwellness, that sort of thing. And what happens is usually when you are in a higher vibrational state, you will not attract the lower vibration. And so this is where you see a lot of people that are of a higher vibration. It doesn't mean that bad things don't happen. Of course they do. Bad things can happen to everybody. Good things can happen to everybody. It depends on where you are. But when you are in a higher vibrational state, you're not really going to attract. These are the people that you're going to, if you say to them, oh, did you see the homeless people downtown? Well, no, I didn't. Because they literally do not see them. In that sense of seeing them, like they're not attracting them, they're not bringing them into their energy field in any way. In fact, if anything, they are pushing them away. Whereas you will see the lower vibrational people, what do they say? Like attracts like. So when you're in a lower vibrational field, what are you bringing in? You're bringing in more people that are depressed or, alcohol or drug-induced type of energy. And you will see like the people that have that high vibration are usually have friends that are of that high vibration, or their kids do extraordinarily well in school. Their kids are happy. Their husbands are happy. They're happy. Their friends are happy. And people go, well, who the hell can live like that? It's got to be fake. Well, who's saying that it's got to be fake? It's these people down here. It's a lower vibrational, right? Because they can see you, but you're not seeing them. I guess in that extent, right? They can see you but they're given that opportunity to either raise up or to lower or stay in that same vibrational field of where they are, right? Whereas the people of the higher vibration, they don't need the lower vibration in any way, so they won't feel it or see it, or it doesn't really interact with them in the broad sense of it. Right? It just doesn't affect them the same way that it would somebody else. And so, when we talk about vibration and energy, like for me, when I am doing a reading for somebody, let's say if I'm doing a relationship reading, I look at the besides it's sort of a broad scope of things. It's like, what do I hear them say in their mind? What do I see? What are their actions that I'm being shown? It doesn't mean that I'm being shown all of their actions. It just means that I'm going to be shown some of their actions, or maybe an action that they just did, or maybe an upcoming action, or maybe their brain thought, or what they just thought about, or what they might have. You know what I mean? If somebody says, what does he think of me? Okay, well, I'm not a brain reader. I'm not a mind reader. I can't tell you that, but I can show you the energy of what I'm feeling. And when we talk about energy and vibration, I see the energy. So I can see the vibrations, right? And if the vibrations are flowing towards you in a happy sort of way, in an easy flow of a way, I guess is the best way to say it, then usually that means that this person is really well thought of by the person who's sending those brainwaves. If you look at the energy, and the energy is sort of stumbling or being blocked or, skipping, I guess is the best way to say it, or even changing color as they get closer to the person, then it's showing me that there might be something off within that energy towards this particular person, whether it's that it's the person who's asked me the question, or whether it's the person who's sending that energy flow. It doesn't, you know what I mean? It's then you have to, that's a whole nother thing that you got to go looking into. But that's the basic premise of it, is that you're looking at the vibration, you're looking at the energy that's being sent out from the person itself. I don't know if that helped at all.
Well, it does, because I think that there's a direct correlation between, our brain waves and that vibration frequency that we have. And and that's the whole purpose of things like meditation, is to alter that vibration, that frequency that we're at. Things like yoga nidra,
absolutely,
is a good example, where it's that trying to alter that frequency so that you're being put into more relaxed state, and that your vibrations are different. So
It's interesting. Oh, I love that. A few years ago, when I first
Great
started
thought.
getting into all of this, like into paranormal, like all of this kind of stuff that was happening, I used to do a lot of meditation. I don't do it as much anymore because I I just sort of, go with the flow right now. But I was doing a lot of meditation. I remember I was with a friend of mine and we were walking down the mall and she goes, "The weirdest thing is happening, Kathy." And I said, "What's that?" And she goes, "Watch the people on the other side of the mall." Like, how you're kind of like, mall might have been split by elevators or whatever. And I'm like, "Okay, why?" And she goes, "Because the people on the other side are like looking over here and then they're starting to come over this way." And she goes, "I've never seen that before. They're coming towards you." And I thought, you know what? I've been in a really good I was in a really good state of mind, like where, you just felt like you were flowing, like you were throwing love out of yourself towards other people. Not nobody in particular, just in general. Like I was in a really good meditative state, I guess. And I was just feeling like really, really good. And I remember that. And it was the weirdest thing because we were in a courtyard, like a food court, I guess. And she said, like, people are looking at us. Like it was weird, and I looked around and I could see it. But then all of a sudden this guy shows up and he goes, "Are you Kathy?" And he says my maiden name. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh my God, I've been wanting to run into you for years." And apparently back in high school, he was suicidal. And I said, "I don't remember." Like, this is the funny part is like, I have a vague memory of it. Just, you know what I mean? Like for me, it was probably just a day at high school. I hate to say it that way, but I don't remember a whole lot of our conversation. And he said that I sat with him for a couple of hours and talked him out of killing himself.
wow.
And I was like, "Oh, good. I'm glad I was there for you." But I don't really, you know what I mean? Like, again, back in the day, it was probably just like for me, we were sitting there shooting the shit and, just talking to them and all of that stuff. And, but it's weird because, like I said, when you put yourself in a higher vibrational state, that's the miracle state. That's where things happen. It's kind of like what Eckhart Tolle talks about, staying present, right? Because when you're present, you're in a higher vibrational state. When you're in a lower vibrational state, you're worried about everything, you're overthinking, you're thinking ahead, you're panicking, you're having anxiety attacks, all of that stuff. But when you're present, that's the miracle state.
That's interesting because I have heard it said that children vibrate at a much higher frequency than we do. And part of that is because, everything vibrates at a certain frequency, but we allow things to kind of cross our frequency, kind of like children don't do that because they vibrate high. They live in the moment. Everything is, face value. They don't have a lot of tainted anything that enters their vibrational, field until they get to be a certain age. And we see it in the paranormal, where children often see and hear things that we can't see or hear, kind of like animals that also vibrate at a little bit of a higher frequency. So, once children reach a certain age, right, they suddenly lose the capacity to see and experience things and feel things at that level. And that's when, they don't have imaginary friends anymore, or they don't see and experience things that we would see and experience. So I think vibration and frequency is so important. And even like pop culture, they love this stuff too, even though we don't really, we don't see it as what it is. I mean, think about it. You've got the Incredible Hulk, who, when he experiences like anger and frustration, his vibrational field changes. And what happens? He turns into this green, horrible monster. But I mean, right? So vibration and frequency is massive. I mean, it's huge. So I don't know. I just think that's really fascinating because you can attract something to you by vibrating at a really high level, or attract terrible things by being depressed and
Yeah.
having energy and vibrationally low. So yeah, that's fascinating, right?
Well, that kind of comes into exactly what the point that I wanted to try to clarify too is, is we tell people all the time, when we die and our spirits go on to that next place, we don't really change who we are. We're
Right.
still, when I die, I'm still going to be Trevor. If Trevor was a good guy in life, I would imagine I'll be a good guy in the afterlife. And if I wasn't such a great guy in life, I probably wouldn't be such a great person in the afterlife either. And so, do you think that those would those vibrational frequencies continue? Are they part of our soul? Or are they part of our physical bodies?
I think they are. I think they are because we're energy, right? Because we're energy. Energy doesn't really, it changes. It goes somewhere. But I think that we are everything. We are energy. We are our intrinsic vibration. And I think that goes with us wherever we go.
And I agree. I think that that's the case as well. And because we talk about all the time as investigators about, we're always looking for a way to tune into the frequency of the spirits. And we look at things like radio frequencies, we look at energy fluctuations, we look at things like that. Maybe we need, and again, this goes back to, if we were able to somehow on command change our vibrational frequency, through meditation or something like that. And this is something I think that mediums are able to do. To an extent where they can actually change that frequency and they can start tuning into a spirit that's trying to communicate through them. If an investigator, as investigators, we could do that. I think that we might get some interesting results, perhaps. But it's again trying to figure out what frequency or how you do that is the big question for me. It's like, I have tried to meditate. I don't think I'm very good at it.
Yeah.
My mind is too busy. I have a hard time. I've actually been working a lot with some different sleep apps and stuff like that, trying to just like calm my brain down before I go to bed so I can try to, fall asleep and things like that. But it is very interesting. Kathy, because you had mentioned, how the way that we talk about the law of attraction and things like that, where, a lot of people say, well, opposites attract, because magnetism, the South Pole, attract to the North. Well, it comes to spiritual energy, it's different. If you have a lot of negativity and negative things in your home and things like that, you are going to attract negative. And vice versa. If it's a more positive and light in your home, you're going to have a little bit of difference there too. So
it's kind of like with demonic possession. If we want to go to that degree, where people talk about negative, energy in their house or a negative spirit, or what some would consider a demonic like somebody that's happy-go-lucky, skipping through the tulips type of person, chances are they're probably not going to attract negative energy in any sort. A negative energy can be attracted to a household that does have a negative vibration to it. So, you can have 4 out of 5 people that are in great moods. Chances are you're probably not going to really attract anything. But if all of those individuals tend to have a sense of discourse, or they fight, or there's negative energy, then you could attract potentially something of a more negative manner, right? But it's sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it was just something.
No, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Is this kind of input, because again, these are just ideas that have been floating around in my head for a while. Is like, I really want to, be able to show the world, eventually it's like, hey, there is something to look forward to after we die. They're, our loved ones, they're right there. They're still there. They're still waiting for us, maybe if we could figure out a way to channel those right frequencies, those right vibrations, we might even be able to communicate with them on a regular basis. I don't know. So I mean, that's something I
Do
think
you
would be
do you
pretty
think
fun.
like I think that that would be amazing. I just there's another part of me that kind of goes, would we cherish life? However, like what
Hmm.
part of us would we stop cherishing life if we only just focused on the death? You know what I mean? Like even knowing that, like even now, sometimes like if we know that there's something on the other side, what part of us are we enjoying life to our full degree? Because you would kind of want to, right? Knowing that we don't know what's going to happen or what's, like you would want to embrace every second of every day kind of thing as much as you possibly could. Whereas if you could just sit there and talk to your loved ones, like I know when I do a reading, like when I do a medium reading, I tend to depending on the individual who I have as a client, there's a lot of times where I'll only do one reading with them, like on a mediumship, because I'm not your channel to this. Like I don't have all day to sit there and just channel
Hmm.
and husband and wife talking or a mother and child or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like I have to go about my life at some point.
Right.
Now, if it was like, on a short time period, okay, but I do find that some people they focus in so much on that loved one that they don't start living life. They don't enjoy
Hmm.
life, as itself, right? And so, I've had to cut people off and say, look at, kind of say your goodbyes to this person, move on and go, go. I had this one woman who was really missed her mother, was really having a hard struggle with her mom. But at the same time, even the mom was like, the things I was channeling was the mom telling her, look at you gotta move on. like I got my own shit to do over here. Was kind of the idea that the mom was putting across, like I'll see you when I see you, but for right now, I've got my stuff to do. You've got your stuff to go live your life, right? And it was really hard for this woman to let go of her. But I tend to wonder if we had the ability to communicate with with our loved ones all the time, would we release and let go and live our lives, or would we be like would it be like a virtual, like we're just connected to a 3D virtual kind of console, like you know what I mean, like that's where we're not doing anything beyond that. I tend to wonder that.
Yeah, it's good. I think you're right. I think that's why we're only given glimpses into that sort of other
The
reality.
other side,
Yeah,
yeah,
if you will,
yeah.
because I don't think we're supposed to know. And I think that's part of it as well. I mean, it's such a multifaceted thing because you'll talk to some people who will say, well, I cannot reach my mother in the afterlife or whatever. But some people will say, well, that's because she's moved on to another life because of reincarnation. So it depends on what you truly believe. And I don't think that we're meant to really know. I really think every once in a while we're meant to have these little glimpses. Oh, and another thing, Trevor, I wanted to ask you. We were talking about frequencies and all of that, and about sort of accessing different frequencies, and whether by accessing these different frequencies, we would be able to communicate with spirit. But what about when you go into, even as an investigator, and Kathy, you as a psychic, when you go into an area where one different frequency already exists? So there already is something there that exists on a different
Mhm.
frequency. And you can pick up on that as an investigator, because I know that when you've been
Hmm.
doing this for a little while, you can walk into a location and instantly know that you've entered this different vibration, this different frequency. And, let's talk a little bit about that. Wouldn't it be interesting to know or to measure the frequency in a specific location
Yeah,
before you
Absolutely.
entered into it, right?
Hmm.
that would be so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, that's a big part of my curiosity in this as well. And I've talked to, we talk about ESP, the extrasensory perceptions and things like that. And what I've learned is like everybody has it. Everybody has those gifts to perceive something that you can't see. You can pick up on those sensations, but like anything else, it's like a muscle that has to develop over time. Some people are really, really good at it right away. People who are like Cathy, who are mediums, I mean, she's got this gift that she's just good at, and the more she does it, the better that she gets. Whereas I might be able to do that to a degree someday if I really, really, really practice. But just like, I can play basketball, but I'm never going to be a LeBron James or, anything like that, right? I mean, there's some people who are more naturally gifted at it than others. But yes.
Or you can be an amazing fireman, which Lynda and I can never do. You're saving real lives.
Well, like we try. And that's part of my stubbornness when it comes to like, trying to crack this whole afterlife thing. It's like, I am one person. I will tell you, I know for a fact that there is a time and place for everybody to die. It is there. If it's your time, it's your time. And if it's not, it's not. I have seen people that have walked away unscathed from the most horrific looking car accidents. And I have seen people die in fender benders for no explanation other than it was just their time. But I will constantly try to fight that, because I will do everything I can to make sure that it is not your time. Right. And so I don't care what fate says. I'm going to do what I have to do to alter the course of whatever nature has intended. But no, you're right. When I have got to the point now that I can walk into a place and instantly know whether there's something going on here or not. It's just something that I've learned over time on what different spirits kind of those. But
is it learned or is it feeling? Like, is it? I think maybe it's that your senses are heightened.
I think that's 90% of it. I think that's 90% of it.
Maybe you're learning to listen to your senses more, but I don't know if it's a learned thing as it is more so a feeling, like you're listening to all of those, and your senses are being heightened, but at the same degree, your psychic senses are being heightened as well.
I look at it like, as a paramedic, when I go in and I see, we do what we call a doorway assessment. When we first walk into somebody's home and I see the patient there for the first time, that's where my assessment begins. I take about 1,000 pictures into my brain as to what this person looks like, what they're, how they're, presenting themselves, what do they sound like, what are their eyes doing, all these different things that are going through my head. In a split second, I can tell you whether that person's sick or not sick. It's like, I know that this person's got an issue, or I think this person is going to be okay. Right. And that isn't something that I learned right away. It's something that I was able to develop over time, after so many experiences of being able to look at somebody and say, okay, and then I can start making these different correlations. I think that's kind of like, walking into a haunted building, and understanding, what I think it's more understanding what I am sensing at the time. Maybe I was able to pick up on it before, but didn't realize it. But now I understand what it is that I'm looking for, what I'm trying to sense, and I think it stands out a little bit more. That makes sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense. But interestingly enough, I recently was speaking to a couple of people about UFO phenomenon, and they mentioned that a lot of times when people are about to experience a visitation in that way, they have a frequency issue. So they hear like a high pitched noise or perhaps a buzzing sound in their ear. And then that's when something happens. They either see something, they experience something unexplained. But that's something that I've always been interested in too, that whole UFO thing. And they're a different frequency. And I'm wondering if that's all correlated, because we've talked about that as well.
Yeah, I think there has to be a connection there for sure. So it makes complete in my mind, it makes sense. I think that extrasensory perception. I mean, one, I know everybody's got it to some degree because people know when they'll get that sense that something's off when they're in danger, or some people can sense when their loved one is having an emergency or a problem, things like that. You're just not able to recognize what it is, and that's the hard part about it. And the more and it's interesting because like even the scientists that I was researching on with all the brainwaves and the frequencies, they don't even understand it. They just know that it's there, that they can, there's something there that they can measure. There's a tangible thing that they are measuring. They just don't understand why it's happening. And, and then the correlation between how we can consciously control those frequencies and those brainwaves, and then, and if we can, if we could learn to control it, would our perception be opened up even further?
Right. I like what Cody says. He's like, just when Trevor looks at me and immediately knows this dude's whacked.
What's great is he proves it to me time and time again. It's amazing.
You get the validation. Yay.
I get the validation. I was right on all the time.
Yeah. No, I think that I definitely think that there's something to do with all of this. It's interesting, what you're saying, what Lynda was saying about the UFOs and the the high pitched and the buzzing and stuff like that. Because I bet what the funny part is, for some reason when you were telling that, I could just hear that. I bet that's a lot of people started off with the buzzing, like when they're explaining it to somebody else, rather than saying, "Oh, I saw this, blah, 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 blah." I bet a lot of them started off the story with, "Well, I heard this high pitched," or "I heard," and that's where they're not as believed.
Yes.
We're not talking about alcohol buzzing, right?
Right. Yeah. But like,
I was buzzing,
I was buzzed. But yeah, no, I bet you a lot of them started off like that because, and then you get that, oh, you heard something, did you? That behavior, right? Rather than, if they had just said, "Look I saw the weirdest thing in the sky," or "I saw this happen," right? But, when we start talking about our senses, our emotions, and it's funny, depending on the era too. I don't know why it made me start thinking about this, but you think back in the 50s where people weren't really allowed to express their emotional behavior in a lot of ways, especially men, right? Women were always fucking hysterical, excuse me, my language, but we were, right? Like no matter what, women were always hysterical. Let's say the 40s, 50s, 60s, that kind of thing. And men always had to be the stern, the logic. They were the breadwinners. They weren't allowed to have emotions, So if a man started off going, "Oh, I felt this," or "I experienced this," right away, they were looked at in a more negative sense. So the rest of whatever they had to say after that was sort of put off as like poo-pooed. It was just,
but think about it when we do our investigations as well. How many times do you get a sign of a frequency change where you feel sick to your stomach, or you get a pain in your head, or something like that happens? And I think physically we can certainly pick up on vibrational changes and frequency changes. And so why not? I guess some people might hear that buzzing in their head, whereas maybe, Trevor, you might walk into a room and think, "Man, I'm lightheaded," or "I don't feel really well here." So those are some things that we can physically pick up on. So maybe, that's the key, to try to kind of pinpoint how physically we're feeling when vibrational energy changes in a specific location. I don't know, because I think that's a major thing.
I think so too. And, and it's just like an investigation. The more we talk about this, the more questions I start kind of going, "What about this?" There's just so much to it. And that's what's so great about, this field is like, I say it's great. It's kind of an oxymoron because it's great and it's also really terrible because it seems like I seldom come up with the right answers. I don't have I don't have a solid answer here. I just, and it's all theories and conjecture and stuff, but man, is it fascinating. Just trying to figure out, just different things. For me, when I walk initially when I would walk into a building that was haunted, when I was a very young investigator, I never got nauseated and never felt sick or anything like that, but it felt like, it wasn't like I was dizzy, but it was like the ground was moving underneath my feet.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah.
Like, even if I was sitting down, it was like my chair was just, I would feel like I was just moving all the time. And it's gotten better over time. I can still get that sensation, but it's a lot much more under control. So, which is nice.
Right. Do you think you're just more aware of it and then you're able to control it in a better sense? Like,
I think so.
You know what I mean? Like, you're aware of it. Like, you probably could sit there and vibrate in your chair if you really wanted or feel that.
Right.
But it's like, I'm aware of it. Okay. I'm just going to put it into.
Yeah, now I can move with it. Yeah.
Now.
I think it'd be no different than being on an airplane or on a jet, somewhere, and you can feel that sensation of movement. But then, after a little bit, you can get up and walk around and you're fine.
Right.
Yeah. But I kind of liken it to that, where it was really weird at first. I didn't really understand it. And then I was like, oh, okay. And then I was able to start correlating it more and more often with places that I'd go. It's like, oh, this is how I felt this time. And this happened. So I'm feeling it again. So maybe there's something going on.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Really yeah. Do you get any feelings and stuff when you walk into a room, Lynda, or like when you walk into a haunted location? Do you feel
For sure. I really do. And I think, well, this might sound really weird, but I think, we try to measure things a lot. And especially in this field, we try to measure stuff, right? And it's sometimes hard to do because you never know, first of all, how you're going to feel, or how intensely you're going to feel. So but I do that a lot. I feel, especially since I've been in the field for so long, I've been in so many different locations. It's almost instantaneous when I go in. It's like it's a vibration, it's a feeling. And it's either a good feeling, or it's a not so good feeling, or it's an overwhelming kind of a feeling. So you kind of know what you're dealing with by how you feel. It's a gauge. It's like a temperature gauge, right? But I think if you've been in this field even for a couple of years and you've been doing this and you're immersing yourself in different locations, I think you can't help but feel something.
Here's a question just to end it off with the both of you. Here's a question to the both of you is what I meant to say. Let me rephrase that. Have you ever walked into like the house of a friend or family member and felt something was off and knew that there was something maybe possibly paranormal going on?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. I didn't know
like,
it at the
even
time.
If they didn't call you for that reason, or you weren't there for that reason, it was just a matter of like, oh, what the hell is going on here? Yeah.
And I didn't know it at the time. And it was interesting because, I spent a lot, it was at my grandparents' house. And I would go over there to visit, and, there were just times where these really weird feelings would creep up on me, like something was really off, something wasn't quite right. I never put my finger on it. I was too young to understand. But looking back on it now, yeah, I know that there was something there.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Okay.
Yeah. Same.
Lynda?
Yeah. Well, my Uncle George's house in Maine, he had a huge house. He had 9 children, and it was quite a large home. We slept in the music room one of the first times that we ever visited. And when I was a kid, I knew instantaneously that there was something there. And about 4:00 in the morning, one of the keys on the piano depressed. And that was kind of cool. And of course, I was very young, but I was saying, "Okay, show me you're here. Play the piano."
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah.
kind of cool.
That is so cool. That is so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember one time we went as we had some team members that they had to take a step back, just for their own, like they had other stuff going on. They were going to move and all of this. They had too much going on. But we had gone over there to visit. So there was a couple of us from the team that went over there to visit, and I think we were kind of helping them pack a little bit too, and just sort of hanging out. And I had brought my son with me at the time, and he was just little. He was little. He was only like, I think 5 at the time. And he's 19 now, so that tells you a lot. Okay. But and we were there, and I remember, like, they never ever said anything about their house being, haunted or anything. Like, it never had come up in a conversation or anything like that. But we were there, and we were in the kitchen, and I remember hearing, all of a sudden I could hear beside me, and I was like, what is that? Like, I literally could hear like a child or somebody talking to me, and it was coming like from the side, and I was like, what the hell is going on? And then I just sort of ignored it, and then all of a sudden I heard it. It was like a muffled TV, or something like that, right? And I went, what the hell is this? Right? Like, I literally said it out loud, and there was another medium that, on the team with us that was there, and he was like, you mean that muffled child sounding thing? And I said, you heard it too? And he's like, yeah, like, it's literally right beside you. Like, it's right beside you. And it would have been about this high. Weird enough. So my son was upstairs playing with their kids, and they had a really big house. So it wasn't like the kids wouldn't have been able to hear us, or they even knew what was, like, this all happened like within minutes of each other. All of a sudden their kids come running down the stairs, and they're like, I don't think we want Dre to play with us anymore today. And we're like, what? Like, what's going on? And he keeps talking about this kitten that's in our bedroom, but we think that he's just trying to scare us. And we're like, what? Like, are you talking? But my son was very alert to stuff like that. He could see, spirits as well. And, and we'll get into that another time. But it was so wild because it was happening almost like, within seconds or minutes of each other, and it was like, holy shit. So, but he described exactly what the other medium could see. I couldn't see it. I could just hear it. But he could see it. And the both of them were like, oh, they went on a little adventure around the house trying to find it after that. Like, they had their own fun. But it was the weirdest thing. It was so bizarre. Yeah. So that I found was really, but you think about the vibrations and the energy in the brain, and like, how it just so corresponded all together. What's Cody saying? Just like kids see on a wider light spectrums, maybe they're tapped into wider ranges of frequencies. Yep. Absolutely. I feel like that.
It's actually one of the things that I saw, and during my studies, they talk a little bit about that as well. So
yeah, we should actually we should make that a show one day, is talk about kids, and get into that. Maybe we'll do that next week or a couple weeks from now, or who knows, we'll see. But thanks, guys, everybody, for joining us. We truly appreciate it. Thanks for being with us again this week, and we will see you next Sunday. And take care, everyone.
Bye now.